Good morning, one and all. Today, I'm going to begin with this topic, the felling of the banyan tree. It is a famous poem by Dilip Chitri. In this poem, the poet talks about the cutting down of an ancient banyan tree that stood in the yard of the poet's ancestral house. The cutting down of the banyan tree seems to signify the cutting down of roots and the movement to a different and more modern atmosphere signified by the move to Mumbai. Now, before we move on, first let me tell you about this poet Dilip Chitri. As you see on your screen, he was born in 1938 and died in 2009. He was born in Baroda. He was a teacher, painter, filmmaker, and magazine columnist. Dear students, Dilip Chitri was a bilingual writer. He wrote in Marathi and English, and most of his writing is in Marathi. He translated some of the works into English. This great writer, he lived and taught in Ethiopia and the USA. His major translations from Marathi into English include the 1968 collection, an anthology of Marathi poetry, and Says Tukar. This poet, who was born in Baroda, who worked as a painter, teacher, filmmaker, and magazine columnist, this great writer talks about exile, alienation, self disintegration, and death. These are the major themes that we find in Dilip Chitri's poetry. He was also a winner of Sahitya Akademi Award. Now, let me tell you about this poem in brief. This poem is about the cutting down of the ancient banyan tree. Now here, this cutting down of this banyan tree signifies many things. One, it signifies the clash of the opinions between the old and the new generation. Now here, when the writer was a small child, when Dilip Chitri was a small child, his grandmother believed that trees are sacred, trees are holy, and if we cut the trees down, that is a crime. That is a crime, that is a sin. Now here, this is the opinion of the grandmother. This is the opinion of the grandmother. The grandmother worships Mother Nature. The grandmother worships Mother Nature. Now, this is one perception of one generation. Whereas the poet's father, what is his opinion about Mother Nature? Does he worship Mother Nature? And the answer is no. He does no more worship Mother Nature. Whereas the poet's grandmother believes that trees are holy, trees are sacred, and they must have to be preserved. See now, what is the opinion of the grandmother? The grandmother's opinion is this, that trees are holy, trees are sacred, and we must have to preserve them. We must have to worship them. We have to live in perfect harmony with Mother Nature. Whereas the poet's father does not regard the cutting down of the trees as a crime. He does no more feel if he cuts down the trees, it is a crime, it is a sin. So these are the two different perceptions. These are the two different ideologies that the poet is presenting in this poem, the felling of the banyan tree. The first philosophy is this, that Mother Nature needs to be preserved. Whereas in the second one, the poet's father is materialistic. The poet's father is materialistic. And he represents materialistic society and its ideology. Since he represents materialistic world and its ideology, he does no more worship Mother Nature. He does no more regard cutting down the banyan tree and other tree as a crime and a sin. And now the small child is watching. What is he watching? The scene in which he finds the clash of the opinions. And what is this clash of opinions? That the grandmother's opinion is that we must not cut down the banyan tree. We must not cut down any other tree. Trees are sacred, trees are holy. Whereas poet's father is very materialistic. He does not believe such philosophy, and he gives orders. He gives orders to the workers. And what are the orders? Cut down all the trees, yes, surrounding their ancestral house. So in this poem, we are going to study how there is the clash of different opinions, and how in this clash of different opinions, how does the child, that is the new generation, reacts. Let us see. Now, before we move on to the discussion, let me recite the poem for you first. The Felling of the Banyan Tree by Dilip Chitri. My father told the tenants to leave, who lived on the houses surrounding our house on the hill. One by one, the structures were demolished. Only our own house remained and the trees. Trees are sacred, my grandmother used to say. Felling them is a crime, but he massacred them all. The sheuga, the audumber, the neem were all cut down, but the huge banyan tree stood like a problem, whose roots lay deeper than all our lives. My father ordered it to be removed. The banyan tree was 3 times as tall as our house. Its trunk had a circumference of 50 feet. Its scraggy aerial roots fell to the ground from 30 feet or more. So first they cut the branches, sawing them off for 7 days, and the heap was huge. Insects and birds began to leave the tree, and then they came to its massive trunk. 50 men with axes chopped and chopped. The great tree revealed its rings of 200 years. We watched in terror and fascination this slaughter as raw mythology revealed to us its age. Soon afterwards, we left Baroda for Bombay, where there are no more trees except the one which grows and seeds in one's dreams. Its aerial roots looking for the ground to strike. Now, here, after reading the poem, you understand that the poet is talking about nature. The poet is talking about the perception of his grandmother. The poet is talking about the possession of his father and the clash. Now, let us begin. My father told the tenants to leave. Now, the poet's father ordered the tenants. And what was the order to the tenants? That they must have to vacate the house. That they have to vacate the houses. My father told the tenants to leave, who lived on the houses surrounding our house on the hill. Now, this ancestral house of the poet is in Baroda, and it is in hilly area, and where the tenants are living, yes, those houses are nearby their ancestral house on the hillside. Now here the poet's father ordered all those tenants to leave the houses. To leave the houses. And after this order, one by one, the structures were demolished. Now the structures of the houses, all those houses where the tenants lived, they were demolished, they were destroyed. Only our house remained and the trees. Now the first order was executed. And what was the first order? That the tenants have to leave the houses. The tenants, they have to leave the houses. Now, after the tenants left the houses, those houses were demolished. They were destroyed. They were collapsed. This was the second order that was executed by the workers, by the laborers. And after demolishing, after destroying completely those houses where the tenants lived, what did remain? Our only own house. Now the poet starts talking about their ancestral home, their ancestral house. Only that house remained. And the trees which have surrounded that area. Trees are sacred, my grandmother used to say. Now, what is the opinion of the grandmother? The grandmother's opinion is this, that trees are holy, sacred. This is what she used to say. And what was her faith? She believed that failing them, cutting down the trees is a crime. Cutting down the trees is a crime. But what did the poet's father do here? What did he do? He gave the orders to the laborers to demolish all the houses and then cut down all the trees that surrounded their ancestral home. So he killed them all. Now, though, the poet is saying, though my grandmother believed that cutting down a tree is a crime, even after that, my father killed all the trees. So the poet says that cutting down trees is a crime, and my father did it. Now, what did he cut down? What trees did he cut down? Yes, he gave order to the laborers to cut all the trees surrounding their houses. And the trees are Shevga, the Audumbar, and the Neem. all these trees were cut down. These trees were cut down by the laborers. Now here, let me revise. In 2 minutes, the poet gave the orders to the tenants that they have to vacate the houses. And these houses surrounded their ancestral home, which was on the hillside. Now, after the father's order, the laborers demolished all the structures of the houses. And after demolishing, what did remain? Yes, their ancestral home and the trees. But even after that, what did the father do? He gave the second command. He gave the second order. Cut down all the trees. Cut down all those trees. Now here, the poet starts talking about grandmother and says that she was a very holy woman. She was a very kind woman. She loved nature. She worshipped nature. And she believed that trees are sacred. Hence, we must not cut them down. And if we cut down the trees, it is a crime. But my father, what did he do? He committed a crime. And what crime did he commit? He killed all the trees. He cut them down. And which trees did he cut down? The Shivga, the Audumber, and the Neem. All trees were cut down by the poet's father, who ordered the laborers to cut them down. Now let us move on to the next part of the poem. Now, after demolishing the structures of the houses, after demolishing Shivga, Neem, and the Audumber, what did remain? The huge banyan tree. And it stood like a problem. It was so huge and it was very difficult to cut. And that's why it stood like a problem. Now, how these laborers were going to cut it down? How these laborers were going to kill it? As it was very huge. Huge means big. This banyan tree was very huge. This banyan tree was very huge. So it stood like a problem. To cut that banyan tree was very difficult. Now let us see what does the poet has to say about this huge big tree that they loved very much. But the huge banyan tree stood like a problem, whose roots lay deeper than all our lives. Now what does this mean? Whose roots lay deeper than all our lives. That this tree was quite old, and this tree has seen many generations passing. So the life of this tree was much longer than the lives of the human beings. So this tree has long been survived. This tree has been survived for a long time. And many generations of the poet have seen this banyan tree outside their ancestral home. And that's why the poet says that the roots of banyan tree lay deeper than our lives. Than our lives, we human beings live for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, maximum 100 years. But this tree had a long history. This banyan tree had been there outside their ancestral home for many years. So the poet says that this banyan tree, which was very big in size, it stood like a problem. It stood like a problem. It was very difficult to cut down the banyan tree. Now the roots of the banyan tree lay deeper than our lives. So this banyan tree had seen many generations of the poets. And it has been there in the company of the poets' forefathers. But the tree which was in the company, The tree which was there in the company of the previous generations of the poets. What did happen to this banyan tree now? What was going to happen to this banyan tree now? Yes, this was going to be chopped down. This was going to be cut down. Now the tree which stood there, the tree which stood there for 5 generations of the poet, that tree has some connections with the poet's previous generations. So the poet, who was a child then, of course, loved this banyan tree. Even his grandmother too believed this banyan tree. And even the previous generations who had lived in that ancestral home, they too lived the banyan tree. So there was there was a connection between nature and these people who lived in that ancestral home. Now, what did happen to this banyan tree? My father ordered it to be removed. What is the order of the poet's father? Cut down the tree, remove the tree. This was the order given by the poet's father. Now, how big is the banyan tree? Let us see. The banyan tree was 3 times as tall as our house. So the poet says that the banyan tree was very huge. The banyan tree was very huge. It was 3 times as tall as our house. And its trunk had a circumference of 50 feet. Circumference, the meaning is the size of something. The size of something measures as the distance around. Now here, the poet starts talking about its size. Its trunk had a size of 50 feet. Now imagine how big is the trunk of this banyan tree. Now you see the images of the banyan tree here. This part, this is the trunk. Okay. Now see, this is the trunk. This is the trunk of the tree, and the size of this tree is almost 50 feet. Circumference means size of the trunk. So the part that I'm highlighting here with the cursor. Okay. So the size of its trunk is 50 feet, and these are its aerial roots. Now just observe this picture. Now do you see on your right hand side, okay, the big picture. Now you see, with I'm showing it with a cursor. These are its aerial roots. So these aerial roots, they almost touch the ground. Okay. See, its scraggly aerial roots fell to the ground. So these roots of the banyan tree, yes, you see, they are almost touching the ground. So the poet is saying here that the banyan tree was 3 times as tall as their house. And second thing, how big was its trunk? Its trunk was very huge, and the size of the trunk was almost 50 feet. And what about its aerial roots? Aerial roots which hang in the air. So see, you see these aerial roots here that I am highlighting with a cursor. So these are the aerial roots that hang in the air, and these aerial roots do almost touch the ground. So its aerial roots fell to the ground. Yes. Now here we see that the banyan tree is so huge in size. It is so huge in size. It is 3 times tall, and it is 3 times as tall as the ancestral home of the poet. And what about its trunk? Hmm? The size of the trunk is of 50 feet, and the aerial roots, scraggly means untidy, aerial roots, yes, they almost hang in the air and they are touching the ground. Yes, let us move on to the next part of the poem. From 30 feet or more so, first they cut the branches. Now here, what about the size? The size of the banyan tree is so huge. It is 50 feet. So do you think that one can one can chop down this tree from its root? No. Do you think that the laborers who are given the order to chop down, to cut down this tree, will they strike their axe on the trunk first? No. So they have to begin with the branches first. If they have to cut down this banyan tree, which is very tall, which is very huge in size, and its aerial roots almost touch to the ground, so this tree is a problem for the workers, that how they should cut down. So they first started cutting down the branches of the tree and sawing them off for 7 days, and the heap was huge. So the poet says the banyan tree was so huge that the laborers took 7 days to cut down the tree. And after cutting down the tree, the huge heap of the branches, leaves, and its aerial roots, they fell to the ground. And the heap is great. Now, after cutting down the branches, it almost took 7 days to cut down the banyan tree. So here the poet is saying that this banyan tree was a huge problem for the laborers to cut down. So they did not cut down the trunk first. They started with the branches first. They cut down the branches first, and then slowly, yes, they started cutting down this tree. Now it took almost 7 days to cut down the tree. After cutting down the tree, there was the huge pile of the branches, leaves, and aerial roots on the ground. The moment the process of cutting down the tree started, insects and birds began to leave the tree. So what did the birds do? What did the insects do? They started leaving the tree. So they became homeless. They don't have any shelter now. They have to move to some other place. So the birds left the tree, and even the insects started moving. And then they came to its massive trunk. The trunk of the banyan tree was so huge. So after cutting down the branches of the tree, the laborers who were ordered to cut down this tree, so they cut down the branches first, and at last they started chopping down the massive trunk of the banyan tree. And how many people were there? 50 men with axes, chopped and chopped. So 50 people were ordered to cut down the tree. So these 50 people with their weapons in the hands, they murdered, they killed the banyan tree. This seems to be like a lynching, mob lynching. Yes, this seems to be like mob lynching to me, because even I treat that trees are human beings. In my opinion, trees do take oxygen. Yes, trees take oxygens. They do have life. But what do human beings do? We human beings do not care for the trees, and we mercilessly cut them down. So here, these 50 men, yes, what did they do? They chopped down the tree. So this seems to be a mob lynching. In mob lynching, what do people do? The fanatics, the extremists, the traditionalists, those who believe in religion, orthodox religion, these people, in the name of love jihad, in the name of honor killing, in the name of casteism, what these people do? These people target the weaker sections of the society, and huge crowds of the people come in the street, and then they beat a person. They beat a person. They beat the person, and after beating the person so mercilessly on the streets, they take kerosene, petrol, and they put that person on fire. If not, they shoot him with a gun. If not, they have weapons in their hands. They murder that person on the street. And even though we live in a democratic country, mob lynching is a very common thing in India. It has become a very common thing in India because whenever there is a news that somebody is slaughtering a cow, what do people do? They come in huge numbers and they target the person. So in this jungle Raj, let me tell you in brief the story that there was a rumor that a Muslim family lived in that particular village, killed a cow, slaughtered a cow, and immediately after that, the orthodox people, the fanatics, the extremists, people came together, and what did they do? They targeted that family and killed them mercilessly. Now, the son of that family is in military. The son of that family is in military and he is serving our nation. So how unfortunate is this that such some fanatic people supported by fanatic politicians who believe in the ideology of divide and rule, and these people divide human society in religion and caste and then make the people fight against each other. So this cutting down of the banyan tree seems to me like mob lynching, in which people come together and kill the human beings. So this is a very sad part of it, that even the politicians in the power, what these people do? They support such fanatics because they want to come in power again and again. So this divide and rule policy, see, though the Britishers lived, the Britishers had adopted this policy, divide and rule. Similarly, these people in the power today, they are dividing the people in the name of religion, in the name of caste, and they are ruling this country because these people are not serious about the problem of unemployment, poverty. The GDP of the country has gone severely down. There is economic recession in this country. Millions of the people have lost their jobs. But what is important for these people? A cow is very important. So for a cow, these people can burn Uttar Pradesh. But when a Dalit girl is raped, these politicians, these Gorakshas, these people who call themselves Gorakshak, they keep mum, they keep silent. When a human being is killed, when a human being is raped and mercilessly killed, the entire system is quiet and calm. I don't know why. Haven't these people sensitivity? Have they lost their sensibilities? That is the question that comes in my mind. So here, these people, they take interest in cow. They take interest in cow. But when do they, when such people take interest in cow? When there is the news that Muslims are slaughtering a cow. Then they take interest in cow. But do they take care what the cows are eating? If you do the sonography of all the cows and buffaloes in India, you will find the garbage of the plastic, the garbage of the Plastic. This is what you will find in the stomach of the cows in India. So why this drama? Why this Nautanki in the name of religion? So this cutting down of the banyan tree seems to me like a mob lynching. That this tree is mob lynched. So here the poet says that 50 men with axes chopped and chopped. And while these people were chopping the tree down, the great tree. Now why the word great? Because it was so huge. The tree was very huge. The great tree revealed. What did this tree reveal? Its rings of 200 years. So this tree, when these 50 men with their weapons started chopping down this tree revealed its age, that it had been there before the ancestral house for 200 years. And we children watched in terror and fascination this slaughter. So what is the poet saying? That we were small children. We were quite helpless. So we watched this terror. We watched this scene in terror and fascination. And the poet says, this was a slaughter. Slaughter, this was a murder. And this is what we witnessed. See, similarly, rapes happen in our society. And we watch them, but we can't help. We can't help because things are not in our hands. The things are in the hands of the administration. The things are in the hands of the politicians. But when the politicians support the rapists, then what we can expect from such government? So this is a slaughter. This is nothing but the slaughter of the humanity. This is nothing but the murder of the humanity. That people have lost their sensibilities. They don't have sentiments. They are not sensible. So what we can say about such people? So here, when the poet is talking about tree, we feel so sad about the tree. What about those girls who are raped every day, every second in this country? What about those Muslim people who are innocent but they are mob lynched? What about Dalits, that every day 10 Dalit girls and women are raped in India? 3 houses of Dalits are burnt every day in this country. So कहाँ है अच्छे दिन? आपने पूछना चाहिए खुद से ही. Are these the good days when every day many girls are raped in a country? Unfortunately, we have lost our sense, we have lost human connection, and we don't have any feeling for such things, because these things have become a daily routine matter for human beings. So they have time to clap their hands, but they don't have time to condemn the act of rapes that happen every day. We human beings, when a dog of a cricketer dies, we express our feelings. But we human beings, when a rape happens to a Dalit girl, we do not express ourselves. What mentality is this? This is Manuvadi mentality, and we have to condemn this. So this is all for today. It is 8:18. We shall be meeting next time. Now what remains? 5 lines that we shall discuss in the next session.